Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NUFC 360 podcast. Newcastle United 1, West Ham United nil in what can only really be described as a small jolt of confidence going into the League Cup final after beating West Ham away at the London Stadium. I'm joined by Ryan. Ryan, what were your thoughts overall on the game? It wasn't exactly one for the neutral, was it?
No, it was a pretty poor game, but a big result, and I think that's what we can take from it. Really, given how tight it is in the league, and given all the noise, it's been a pretty negative week for the club
Mm,
in terms of even for a Newcastle negative week, which tend to be a lot worse than some. It's been a bit of a going into a massive game like Sunday. It seems to just be a bit of a bad air around the club, and I think it was important to put on a performance ultimately tonight. Result obviously much needed and much welcomed. I thought
mm.
we deserved to win the game. I thought West
Definitely the
Ham were
better side,
really
yeah.
poor. Yeah, I mean, I think we were obviously lacking a little bit in the final third. I don't know if it's confidence or quality or what. Maybe players not being 100% at it. I think
Mhm,
Isak obviously struggled to get into the game, didn't
mhm.
get any service, admittedly,
Yeah.
but perhaps wasn't as sharp as Murphy was off it as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it was a really important win. I feel like I say, I think we did enough to control the game. I thought the midfield three really good. Um, and I think, defensively, despite a little blip in the first couple of minutes, we actually looked pretty comfortable, and West Ham didn't actually create a lot of chances. So, yeah, positives to take forward.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the early minutes of the game. The back line in particular looked really shaky, and there was lots of chat in the group chat before, early on, and with other people in my WhatsApp. Along the lines of, "Well, we can't play like this against Liverpool." It did look a bit shaky to begin with. I think the game overall was a bit scrappy at times. I think particularly the first half, it was very sort of bitty in midfield. I mean, you mentioned Isak not being really at it. I mean, yeah, I think you're right about Murphy not being on it having an impact. I think also that the traditional left side of the attack not being there didn't help. Tino couldn't really pass like we saw against Brighton. He wasn't particularly good with the ball at his feet. I mean, he can run, and he can be a dynamic runner. I think he handled himself relatively well defensively and off the ball. I think Bowen and Kudus were largely quiet. And you're right, West Ham weren't exactly great, were they? I mean, I think in the last pod episode we said that underlying numbers have us as the fifth or sixth best team in the league, and West Ham is the fifth worst team in the league. And I think by and large it looked like it. I mean, we looked like the team after about the first sort of 20 minutes. We looked like the team that was going to win. Harvey Barnes could have maybe scored. I don't know if he maybe should have done a little bit better for his chance in the first half. It was maybe near post. You were maybe asking a bit too much of him with that sort of cheeky little heel flick. I mean, the numbers bear it out as well. 1.38 expected goals for us to 0.45 for West Ham. I mean, it wasn't exactly an exciting attacking display. I mean, I think we had six shots in the first half, three in the second. Those three in the second turned into two big chances. One of which saw, Barnes took back-to-back shots from distance at goal. One of which ended up being an assist for Bruno, who sort of stretched out to turn it in. I think Bruno. I think he obviously got man of the match from Sky. I think he had his best game in a little bit. I think he was pretty good. He didn't give the ball away a ton. I think the only people who weren't at least decent were Isaac and Murphy and Pope. I think everyone questioned why Pope was playing when the lineup came out. He hasn't looked good. I mean, Sky had stats before the game, and I think across the board, we've performed worse when Pope's been in goal, right? I mean, one of my favorite comments I've seen after the game was, it's hard to tell who needs to get better quicker, Nick Pope or the real Pope. It's hard to tell. But I think overall, you can't. I think it all comes down to we can't really overthink the game or the result. It's a win. There were no injuries and no red cards in the game immediately before Wembley. And I think if you'd said that to anyone going into this game, I think we would have taken it. I think Barnes looked all right. I think that takes us now. I think we're sixth level with City. They're above us on goal difference. But I think overall, I think it can probably be surmised by saying something like, I honestly would have rather watched songs of praise for 90 minutes than that game. It was so boring. Um, but I mean, does that game? I mean, we'll go into it further in a midweek episode of the podcast. Tune in for that, everyone at home. But what do you think going into Wembley? Does that sort of off the dome immediately after that game, Ryan? Does that game give you more confidence going into Wembley, or the same?
The same, really. I mean, like you say, I think it's you can't really take too much from the performance. Obviously, the result you can. I think it was just a solid performance, and I think it was what was needed. A clean sheet, which is important.
Yep.
And I think it was nice to see that midfield three back together ultimately,
Hmm.
because I think that if we are going to win that game, we need to win that battle in midfield, and we're going to
Yeah.
have to win the ball in positions and be aggressive, because ultimately, if we are going to score, it's more than likely going to be on the break.
Yeah.
I think you know momentum's a big thing in football. So although the cards are stacked up against us, you could argue we're actually a better side on the counter attack.
Yeah.
But I think you could see it quite often in our build-up play tonight, where we're missing the Lewis Hall or Gordon Barnes isn't really a man,
It
although
was
he's a
it was
clever
really
footballer.
slow. It was really slow the
Um,
build up, wasn't it?
yeah, although he's not, he's a clever footballer. And you see it. He has got quality in him. He's not the type of guy that Gordon is. He's a different profile, isn't he?
Yeah.
Gordon's a bit more aggressive, and Lewis Hall, you could
Barnes
argue
is a goal
maybe,
scorer, right?
yeah. And I think even if Hall was playing in the first half, we could have maybe carved out a few chances for Isaac as well.
Yeah.
I think Tino got, and like you say, I think he summed it up perfectly. He's got good energy, and he gets himself in good positions. I think ultimately, even on the right hand side, his final ball is just his biggest drawback at the minute
Yeah.
in terms of his progression as a footballer. Hinders him even more being on the left hand side. But yeah, it's hard to find a lot to say really. I think Trippier thought had a good game defensively. I thought he was
Yeah.
solid. He didn't do anything wrong, and he did a pretty good job on Kudus. So yeah, I mean, like you say, it was a pretty poor game, and all you
Mm.
can really take is a bit of momentum and hopefully a bit of belief. And I think that's key for us. We can't go in there. It's not a day out. We need to try and match Liverpool, and I think we can physically. It's
Yeah.
just whether we are, well, I guess what's the word, like disciplined enough at the back to
Yeah.
go there and frustrate them.
Yeah. I think you're right on particularly on the midfield. I think we're going to need, like you say, we're going to need that midfield to be on it to stand a chance. You look at Liverpool's midfield has probably been their biggest strength this season. That combo of particularly Gravenberch and Alexis McAllister. I mean, we saw it when we played them earlier this season. They just outplayed us in the middle of the park, and we're going to need that to not be the case at Wembley, particularly with Joe Linton. And I mean, it's nice. One of the benefits of having Joe Linton back in was that when Bowen and Zocek and Kudus and the like were on the ball, Wan-Bissaka could find some space on the right hand side. Having Joe Linton there to work back and get into defensive positions is a lot more helpful than it has been
Yeah,
in recent
I
weeks.
thought, I thought, I thought he was excellent actually, Julian. You know, one thing and then we've had this discussion a few times in terms of perhaps his quality on the ball, and perhaps moving forward is not that type of midfielder that Newcastle want to have in there in terms of when you're trying to break a team down. But
Mhm.
you can't deny in games like that his physical presence. He makes a massive difference in the midfield
Yeah,
defensively, and he was pretty tidy on the ball actually. He was a few nice turns. Would like to have seen a little bit more of him going forward. He didn't really seem to that kind of on the left hand side where he can quite often be effective. He wasn't really there to be found. I don't know whether that was a tactical thing, but a really solid game for all midfield and Tonali. I think it was. I'm going to drop a stat here, but I think Sky was saying he won every single duel in the midfield. So yeah, positive signs from the midfield.
yeah. I think there's. I mean, the numbers I've seen from Opta have him winning 7 out of 8 ground duels. So it might be everything, all but one, because he won both of his aerial duels as well. Outside of clearances, in which case you're looking at Burn and Share having the most. I think yeah, Sandro Tonali had a match high tackles and interceptions. He won the ball back more than anyone on the pitch. The only person that um, came close to him was Joe Linton, who had one fewer, and Edson Alvarez for West Ham, who's also quite a good defensive midfielder, I find. And yeah, he and Joe Linton, particularly, both being at the top of that list, they're going to be vital, like we say, against Liverpool. And they were vital today. I mean, you imagine without Joe Linton in, Willock would have probably been the starter. And Willock, when he came on, wasn't very good. I didn't think. I think he was
Work
very
rate,
average.
work rate's a bit questionable for me. I think I was getting a bit frustrated
Yeah.
at the end. He gave the ball. I don't know if he gave the ball away. It was a bad pass from Wilson or whatever, but there just didn't seem to be that desire to get back in.
Yeah.
You defending a one goal lead, and you could see him walking about. So yeah, I agree, Stephen, and I do think perhaps not creatively, but in terms of a disciplined physical midfield, that it's up there as one of the best, and it's going to need to be on
Mhm.
Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to need what little depth we do have at the moment. We're going to need it on Sunday. I think Longstaff came on the 88th. Didn't really need to. Wasn't really asked to do much. I mean, he just put himself about a little bit. I think we're probably going to see. We'll probably predict this in the pod episode midweek, but we'll probably see the full bench be used. Today was the game I wanted to see Matt Target start at left back. I know he's not been good, particularly when he's been on the pitch. But when he's been on the pitch, usually the team hasn't been good either. Namely, looking at the Brighton game, I just think not having that left footer at left back, someone who can overlap past Barnes, because Barnes wants to cut in every time. He doesn't really use his left foot. I think that's just something that might be a bit better. But knowing how he's very stubborn, he will, I think, naturally just stick with Tino on the left, as much as I might disagree with it.
Matt Target up against Mohamed Salah is the stuff that that'll keep you
Yeah,
up at night with that. I mean, I see your argument. I think Sunday is too big a game to throw him in, and I think
Yeah,
the problem
having
is
not
he could.
played, yeah, definitely. I think having not played today or much recently, yeah, I agree. I think that it would be too much to ask that of him now.
Totally agree, and I think yeah, just having a laugh at the thought of Matt Target overlapping Harvey Barnes. But yeah, you know what you're going to get from Target.
Yeah,
And admittedly hasn't played a lot of football. He's probably not a Premier League level footballer anymore, but he's solid enough defensively. He doesn't really do anything special. He's a bit like Paul Dummett, really, a slightly better Paul Dummett. That's kind of how I see him. Maybe that's an insult to Target, but
I think he's a little better than that. I think people sort because he hasn't played much at all. I think people rag on him a little bit too much. I do think he does have his value. I think we said in the last pod episode, he can put a ball into the box when he is asked to deliver a ball in. He can do it. His left foot is actually pretty solid, and we do sort of miss someone with a left foot without Hall in the game, taking free kicks and corners and whatnot. Tonali can sort of take stuff with his left foot, but it's not his natural inclination, so it doesn't always look the best. But either way, I think ultimately we go back to what I said before about not overthinking the game. I think a 1-0 win, a modicum of momentum going into Sunday, when we'll probably commiserate before the game, before we even get to match day in the midweek pod episode. Without Hall, without Gordon, it's going to be a really inordinately tougher game than it was already. But other than that, yeah, we take the 1-0 win, we move on to Sunday, and we hope that the 3 points can give us a nice little bump of confidence. The players at the end of the match looked happy. The energy from Jolinton and Bruno was really good. You really hope that the recent form has been a dip because of the final, not just a dip in form. We really hope that we'll see our best.
yeah, he saw a bit of emotion out of Howe too, actually. Unusually, he's normally pretty composed on the sideline, but you could tell meant a lot to him to win that game, which is good. And like you say, Stephen, I think the players were also relieved to win the game, and we saw a little bit of emotion coming out of the guys at the end. But yeah, look, it's going to be a tough game. It was a good platform tonight to build on, and one can only dream, I guess.
Yeah.
We're up against it, but I've seen stranger things happen for sure.
Absolutely. But in any case, thank you everyone for joining me. Ryan, thank you for joining me for a match reaction. We move on to Sunday. Join us midweek for a new episode of the pod. Thank you everyone for joining us. And as always, take care, like, comment, and subscribe.